the right people come together at the right moment, when they care almost as much about winning as they do about each other, they can become the best of the best.
Welcome to the best soccer show. The best soccer show in the whole world.
Here we go. It's the best soccer show. Jason Davis, Dan Vaughn in the building.
Happy to
Jared
be.
Dubois at the beach. Dan Vaughn doing me a solid and sitting in on a Thursday night, on the regular night of the best soccer show. The traditional, it's not the, we used to do it on Sundays. I can't say it's traditional if we used to do it on Sundays. All right, well, we do it on Thursdays now. We are here. We are ahead of the Gold Cup quarterfinal with the United States and Costa Rica. We've got a U.S. women's national team game happening right now, right this second. For anybody listening after the fact, we'll try not to talk too much about that as it unfolds. We do have a bunch of Americans who could be moving clubs this summer, which is interesting, I think. I will point out that Dan Vaughn, as it says under his name, if you're watching via video, is the editor of Protagonist Soccer. They do as good a job as anybody in this country covering lower division soccer in America. And I have to say, probably better than anybody covering the Women's Super League, USL Super League, which just finished its inaugural season. Mm-hmm. So I want to shout out those things for Dan. Now, Dan, I don't usually work with another bearded man because Jared is clean shaven. He's got better hair than me, but his beard is not there. So what are we, the men in beardsers? Platesers, men and beards. We're a couple of we're two guys with beards is what we are here on a Thursday. No, Jason, that is not Jay Rodius. That is indeed Dan Vaughn. So again, we're here hanging out on a Thursday. Dan, again, thank you for doing this. Thank you for coming by.
Hey, Jason, I'm always looking forward to when I get that message. Hey, you got time? Does it work into my schedule? Sometimes it doesn't, but when it does, always happy to sit in with you.
All right, good. Let me make sure that everything works. I know I played the intro, but we've got the sound drops here at the Best Soccer Show. They're being a little slow. It's like a delay. If I give it just a second.
Duh and or hello.
There it is. See, I pushed it like 6 seconds ago. So I don't know what's happening with that. It may not work in terms of when I want it to work. Maybe I'll pull it back up. I don't know how much you like those things, Dan. I don't.
It feels very like morning show, like the Zoo Crew. Most people have no idea what we're talking about.
No, well, that might be the case, but it's also the case that Jared and I started the show and very much leaned into that idea of sort of being a crazy radio show as much as we're just a regular podcast. Nobody, as far as I know, is doing drops in the world of soccer podcasts. So even if you don't like it, at least we're unique over here, right? At least we're doing something nobody else is doing. I'm going to see if this one, it's still just being really slow. I don't know what the delay is, but anyway, maybe just give it a second. It's not going to go. It's not going to go. All right, whatever. We'll come back to those, or maybe I won't play them at all. I don't know. Okay, so let's dive in. Oh, I do have another bit of business. The phone lines are open. We're also old-fashioned that way. We have an actual call-in phone number, 315-872-2378. If you call that phone number, I will be able to put you on the air as an actual caller, almost like you're on a radio show. Maybe you want to talk about the U.S. men's national team. Maybe you want to talk about Americans moving clubs. Maybe you want to talk about Christian Pulisic versus Mauricio Pochettino, which I wrote a little bit about today on my newsletter. I know I'm kind of late to the party with that, but I've been talking about it on the radio. Dan, do you have an opinion on all that drama? How do you feel about it?
It is. It's so tough when players do anything outside of the norm. And what was crazy with Pulisic, I think it made it worse, is that when he decided to exit the Gold Cup roster, so many other players kind of followed suit for their own variety of reasons. And I think that really sort of magnified his decision, almost as his leadership had done part of this. I don't know if that's entirely fair. But we also know about Pulisic's history with little nagging injuries that come up when he plays more minutes and this is, I think, my understanding is that this season he's played more minutes than he has in any of his professional seasons.
Yeah.
I hear the arguments about how important building up some Riz heading into the World Cup, and then you want this Gold Cup to shine. I understand that, and I think Pulisic is thinking bigger than that for his own career. And I think for fans, that's hard to respect or appreciate.
Right. Yeah,
And
that's the thing, right?
That's tough. But let me ask you, how many times have you decided you wanted to take a vacation and decided, regardless of what that might mean for your job, or the people that work with you, and this is a business and their bodies are their business. Taking care of it's what they got to do. So it's complicated.
Dan, I am a workaholic. I have a problem. I don't know how to stop working.
True.
I don't know how to put down the microphone and step away. Okay. That is it's hard for me to connect with Pulisic on that front, because I always worry about getting Wally pipped. Mm-hmm. And the fact that is a thing that you can say in 2025 and people understand what you mean when that happened in 1930, whatever, says everything about that idea. Now, and Pulisic really shouldn't have a concern about getting Wally pipped. He's not going to get beaten out as the best American attacking player. I know that Jared and I have had a little bit of a back and forth sometimes as to whether or not he's the best American attacking player, because there have been moments when Tim Weah was maybe better or Ricardo Pepi was maybe better. Come on, let's be honest about this. And it doesn't always translate club to country, but Pulisic's brought it for the most part. There have been times when it's been maybe not as effective as we would like. I think some of that is because he took too much on his shoulders, which is kind of like, you kind of have to respect that. As much as sometimes it's frustrating to watch Christian Pulisic try to dribble 6 guys, you kind of respect that he's the guy who's like, I'm going to make it happen because I don't know if anybody else can do it for us.
Right.
So, so we have this weird relationship. It's a love-hate relationship with Christian Pulisic. Christian Pulisic has, and it's very different than the one that I think we had with Donovan, but in the general sense that some people love him and some people don't, it is similar that way. And he is not helping that, Dan, by choosing to pass on this Gold Cup.
I think that Pulisic is sort of showing his hand as far as how he sees this Gold Cup competition as being not as important on his hierarchy of needs or goals. And I think that I can remember back, and you might remember this. I mean, the Berhalter era, some have blacked out, but I can remember when Berhalter first took over and they played a friendly against Mexico, and he insisted on playing out of the back, even though the team wasn't really ready for that. And I think we lost 3-0, and it was ugly. And he came out afterwards, and I remember him throwing a press conference and saying that he was pretty happy with the results, that he saw a lot of things to be excited about. And the fans just roasted him for that. And I think we have to understand there's different viewpoints on what's going on other than just the fan base's perspective of what's going on. Right. I think Pochettino is the same way. I think that there are times when he looks unbothered by the fact that the team might be losing. I mean, that game against Switzerland was just awful to watch. And the reality was that he was doing things with the roster. He was testing out players. So I think there's some of that going on too, that maybe we're putting ourselves in Pulisic's position. And I don't know that any of us really know what that feels like to be an international superstar, which he is, and maybe the best American soccer player. Okay, we could say top 10. We could say top 5 at this point. So I think that all of those things are things that we can't really comprehend, and that
becomes a big problem for interacting with the player and the team as fans. Sure. Because if it's always, well, we don't know, well, then that's it. You have to stop there. You never get to go further in the discussion if you're just like, well, there are things we can't understand. And I work with Eric. I'm
going to interrupt you just for a second, but think about how much we love, or most of us do anyway, Clint Dempsey, because we felt like the passion that he played with was the passion that fans felt. And so there's a special connection with that player that honestly no one feels towards Donovan. Except for maybe some Galaxy fans. No one feels the same way about Donovan. Yes, we acknowledge how good he was, but we didn't connect to him. Like, it's a rare thing.
Okay, but and that was what we're talking about, emotional connection rather than sort of an intellectual understanding of what these players are. Landon Donovan scored as many goals as Clint Dempsey did during his international career. Obviously, he played a little bit more than Dempsey did, 57? So you could give Dempsey more credit, I suppose. But it's not like Landon Donovan didn't show up when it mattered. Sure. He scored goals in World Cups. Like, he did things that we wanted him to do as our best player. What we hold against Donovan is the thing that got him in trouble when he started talking about Christian Pulisic passing on this Gold Cup, and that's that sometimes it didn't seem like he wanted to push himself, and that became a reflection of us. And that's interesting in Pulisic's case, because now we're moving the goalposts, Dan. Because for Donovan, it was, you didn't go to Europe and stick it out, and now we feel ashamed because you couldn't figure it out at Leverkusen, right? Then when you decided to step away and take your sabbatical and go off to Thailand and play soccer with kids in the streets, that felt like you were turning your back on us. And obviously it gave Klinsmann an opportunity to boot him from the team.
Yep.
Right. Whereas Pulisic has done everything we ask of a player in terms of flying the flag internationally. He's gone to Europe. He made it work at Dortmund. It sucked at Chelsea, but he hung in there. He's been good at Milan. There's nothing you can say that Christian Pulisic hasn't done. The only thing you can say is like, maybe he's got an extra level, but that's unfair because he's already done better internationally, better in a European club environment than any other American player in history. And yet here we are going, well, but you're not really committed to the national team the same way, right? Like what? And we're not allowed. And again, like I was one of those people who got emotional and said he should play. If he got called up, he should play.
Sure.
But that's like you said, that's me not being able to put myself in the shoes of somebody who is playing that many games in Europe or being asked to carry that burden or whatever it might be. Or who, when he comes back to play for the U.S. men's national team, gets kicked 6 times from Sunday. And I was going to say, like, Eric Ronaldo will throw this at me all the time. Like, you don't know. You didn't play for the national team. Only people who get to, only people who played for the national team, only people who played in Europe, right? Oh, how dare Donovan say anything because Donovan didn't spend an entire season in Europe the way that Christian Pulisic has, right? But then again, if we do that, then no one can ever say anything. We're all just going to have to throw up our hands and go, well, I guess he can just do whatever maybe he can do whatever he wants, but that's not how we interact with our teams as fans.
I think that there's something, it's a line somewhere in the middle, right? Like there has to be a balance between understanding our role as fans and our desire to see the best lineup every competition and the experience of the players that we could never wear their shoes. So I think that you're right. U.S. women's national team almost scored right there. We said we weren't going to do that. But I'll say that I think that is part of the problem, is that trying to find that line where it fits and the expectation that we have on the players, I think, is sometimes unrealistic. And let's be also real. While Pulisic has scored a lot of goals for the U.S. at a young age, he oftentimes underperforms against teams that don't excite him.
Oh man,
but
you are getting into very subjective territory now, Dan.
I'm just saying, I'm surprised Pulisic didn't want to play in the Gold Cup as a chance to punch Mexico. That Pulisic loves to score against Mexico,
right? And that's one thing
surprised me.
It's one of those things you could never say about Donovan, because when the U.S. played Mexico, Landon Donovan showed up and scored goals. Sure. Right? He was the Mexicutioner for a reason. And but not even everybody that gives him credit for that, right? Mm-hmm. Because again, we're moving the goal posts as necessary because we, as American soccer fans, are very needy, Dan. We need these guys to do right by us. We can't do it ourselves. I can't go out there and kick the ball for Milan or for the U.S. men's national team. So I need Christian Pulisic to be really good at it so I can be validated as a soccer fan. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're not wrong. I think that we have little man syndrome, right? We always want people to acknowledge our greatness, even if our greatness doesn't always measure up in reality. And it just becomes, we're always chasing the respect card. We're always chasing, we want to be acknowledged as a superpower, but the reality is that we're not.
Yeah, that's why this is so complicated and difficult, and it becomes a thing where Christian Pulisic feels he has to defend himself on a podcast because some people question his commitment to the U.S. men's national team. I don't know. Look,
I was going to say, I don't think that sort of the clash between Pochettino and Pulisic is anything. I think when you have a player of Pulisic status and Pochettino's experience managing players like that, I don't think it's an issue that's going to linger.
Probably not. And that's what I wrote today. Like, if there's anything to be concerned about, it's about a fracture between Pochettino and Pulisic. I don't think so, because as much as Pochettino is a Argentine, you show up and bleed for your country kind of guy. He's not an idiot. He knows he needs Christian Pulisic to be the best he can be at the World Cup next year.
Sure.
He just drew a line in the sand and said, you can't play friendlies if you're not going to play in the Gold Cup. And fine, Pulisic's mistake was saying, I don't understand that. Because he should understand that.
Sure.
Because obviously what Pochettino wants is a consistent camp that he can run and take a look at and all those things. I think it's going to be fine. It's just one of those things. It's like mommy and daddy fighting. Please stop that as much. But at the same time, and I wrote this today in the newsletter as well. By the way, Jason Davis, Soccer Eagle, look it up.
I gotta subscribe right now.
I said that, this is also what we want, right? Or maybe not everybody. This is what I wanted, right? And I recognize my position as a radio guy, as somebody who's been writing and talking about soccer in America for 20 years. I want there to be interesting things happening, Dan. I want stories that we can dig our teeth into. And as much as this might be sort of a negative, positive stories don't get people excited. They don't really get people going. At least, like if the team wins, that's what I want. But the thing that gets the thing that fills the space between the games, right? The thing that the NFL thrives on, the NBA thrives on, those things are about, well, this player did that thing to that player, said that thing about them on social media, and now we're fighting, right? Not in real terms, but it just in that sense of like a back and forth. And I said that I don't think this is the kind of thing that makes the mainstream sports media. Not yet, right? And maybe it never will. Although Johnny Infantino thinks that soccer is going to be the biggest sport in America in 5 years because he showed up. He's here. Johnny's here. So we're all good now. But I do think that it's at least we've got this, right? At least there's something to dive into. And it's almost like we've leveled up. As much as it stinks that these guys are back and forth in the media, the fact that people are paying attention to a back and forth in the media, that's relatively new for American soccer.
And let's be 100% real. The success of Christian Pulisic at Milan and even at times at Chelsea and before that at Dortmund, it stands out in the history of American soccer as just something unheard of, unseen. I don't think we'd get an 8-part miniseries if he was playing at Red Bull New York. It's just a thing that he's doing something that we haven't seen before. And I think that sort of creates a magnifying effect on any of this drama. Because I'm sure we've had some intense drama at the U.S. national team roster.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, I will mention, I can't get the drop to play because I would traditionally drop the thing that I do when we talk about the radio. Eric Ronaldo has said, like, if social media existed in 1998, oh, what a shit show that would have been, right? Like, that's, who knows? Who knows what would have gone down? So, yeah, that's where we are with this. All right, let's move on from the drama, and let's talk about the U.S. men's national team as it is currently constituted. They win 3 Gold Cup games. They didn't impress in any of them except the first one. There are some things you can pick out. Malik Tillman looks good. Patrick Aubameyang's goal was very nice. We've seen Diego Luna make some impact. Center Chris Richards obviously has been a star of this team. There are people legitimately thinking that Costa Rica is going to end this run. Dan, are you of that opinion?
I'm a fan first and foremost, Jason. I am always a believer until you make me not believe. I of course we're going to win against Costa Rica. Absolutely we are. In the end, we are we're one of the top 3 teams in CONCACAF, and that's just the truth. Canada and Mexico are also there, and sometimes we underperform against some of these teams, but we're going into knockouts. And yes, maybe we haven't played our best soccer in group stage, and at times it has been hard to watch. But you mentioned Malik Tillman. This has been a coming out party for him. He's brought the excellence that he's shown at PSV.
Okay, hold on. You say that. I'm just going to say this. Isn't it kind of like coming out at junior prom, though? Like, it's not senior prom. It's junior prom.
Hey, listen, the World Cup is still a year away. We've got a whole year for him. And speaking of transfers, there's news that he might be on the move. So all I'm saying is he's played very well, and it's good to see because we needed someone to play very well. We haven't really had a lot of top performances here. I know you mentioned Aguilar, and I like him at times, but he can also be a little chunky sometimes as far as not scoring goals. He'll kick the ball and not necessarily put it in the net. Malik has been dangerous in this group stage.
Yes.
I'm excited to see what he does in knockout. So, I mean, I think and these are the scars of Trinidad and Tobago that linger within us all, that of course we're scared that we may get knocked out in a match that we should win. Of course we're scared of that. That's PTSD. That's lingering. It's always there. You know what could happen. We know Alejandro Bedoya might be on that back line ready to mess things up for all of us. But the reality is that we should win against Costa Rica. We'll see if we do. But I am very much a believer in this. And I will tell you that there have been times when I've been a little concerned about the level of attention to detail and focus that we're getting out of Pochettino. I will continue to worry about that a little bit. And I have heard that talked a little bit about some of the podcasts I listen to. I won't pretend that's a brand new idea that I've got, but it just sort of feels like maybe he's going through the motions because he also is focusing on the World Cup. I think a lot of people are. And when you're already qualified, this is the problem, right? This was the problem that a lot of people talked about, that the U.S. might coast a bit going into this World Cup because they were already qualified. And I think that we're seeing some of that. I think that's why Pulisic is not that locked in over this offseason. I think he's trying to rest because he's thinking about the World Cup and he's got nothing to prove at this point. But anyway, yes, Costa Rica. Yeah, we got to win. Come on, Jason. You don't believe?
No, I do. I think they're going to win this game. And I have like actual like information that I'm going to use to make that case, in addition to just my gut, which says in this tournament, even with not the first team, not the A team, the United States typically wins at this point in the tournament. We may lose a final. It's possible a semifinal. Canada is the likely opponent in the semifinal because they had Guatemala. And as much as I would love to see Guatemala win, because that'd be great for my community here in Northern Virginia, I just don't see it. They are missing Manfred Ugalde, who is their leading goal scorer in this tournament and probably their most dangerous player. They're also missing Joseph Moore. That's 2 yellow card accumulation situations, I think, for them. And then they also have Warren Madrigal, who picked up an injury against Suriname in the opening game. So if they don't have their top goal scorer, what is Herrera likely to do? Not go after the United States, more than likely. And even if he did have Ugalde, he's probably not going toe-to-toe. Now, what this means, though, because we saw it against Saudi Arabia and to a lesser extent against Haiti, is the United States has to break them down.
Yeah.
And I expect Costa Rica under Herrera to be organized. I expect them to make it difficult. I don't know that they are as good as the Saudis at slowing you down that way. But of course, this is the theme, right? It was the theme at the Nations League. It's the theme now. I mean, against teams that actually could play with the ball, they got demolished by Turkey and Switzerland. This one and this tournament, TNT open and beatable, obviously. Saudi Arabia eventually gave up a goal, and against Haiti, just slightly better. I think this is something like a 1-0, hopefully 2-0 kind of game. I don't think it's a going away victory. I don't think they're going to run off with it. I don't think they're going to score 3 in the first half. But I do think they're going to win the game eventually, whether it be through somehow breaking down Costa Rica. Hopefully they figure out those combinations. Diego Luna is part of this story. Obviously with Malik Tillman, like to see them work together, slip Ajamang, whoever. I think it's going to be Ajamang, right? Slip Ajamang in a couple times. Maybe we get something going, force some saves, some rebounds, some putbacks, that kind of stuff. Or there's a set piece. That was the story against Saudi Arabia. And I think they have enough weapons in terms of service and threat in the air to win this game. And it's possible they don't, Dan, but that's my logic on why they will.
And listen, the Achilles heel of the U.S. men's national team for years has been our inability to break down a low block. We've always struggled to do that. And it can be tough to watch, especially when we have those high-power goal scorers like a Pulisic. We just expect them to score goals. Tim Weah, we expect them to score goals. And when we're in this slog trying to break down those back lines in CONCACAF, and we're getting the constant fouling to slow down the games, and we're struggling to move the ball, it becomes difficult to watch. And as a fan, that can be very disheartening. But I agree. I think that we have the kinds of players that can I mean, if you've watched some of the touch passing between Diego Luna and Malik Tillman and even Brendan Aronson at times, we've seen some of this like fun chemistry starting to form there where the ball is moving quick between these guys. And it has to, if you're going to break down a low block and get a scoring opportunity. And again, as you said, there's several players out with I think some key players out with injury for Costa Rica, and there's also yellow card accumulation for Costa Rica, and I think that sets us up for a win here. I think you're right. I don't think we're winning 5-0, but I think that doesn't really matter when you come to knockout. It's just a matter of getting the point in the win-loss column. So I think
there are no style points here. As much, and obviously this is made more complicated by the fact that this isn't the first team, that we are still sort of looking for signs that Pochettino is making something happen that goes beyond what we're used to, what we're accustomed to, which is narrow margins against, pretty much anybody that's not a Caribbean nation. And so we want that to happen. But tournament soccer isn't really made for that. I mean, I think even Mexico is going to have a hard time against Saudi Arabia, and probably their press will go crazy if they only win 1-0, but they'll beat it through the semifinal. And then, then it's win that one and it's the win the next one. And I do want to say that, and I've had this conversation with people recently, win the Gold Cup because it's worth winning the Gold Cup. Right? Let's not make it more complicated than that. Let's not do this thing where it's like, well, it's this kind of Gold Cup, or it's that kind of Gold Cup, or Pulisic's not here, and McKennie's not here, and Jedi Robinson's hurt. No, don't. I mean, that might bring down the total quality of the U.S. men's national team in aggregate, but it doesn't make the Continental Championship any less valuable. I know I'm kind of wish casting that people would take this more seriously, sort of like the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Like, everybody take that seriously. It's important. But this is, I know it's every 2 years, and that also undermines its importance, but come on, like, win it because it's good to win it. And then obviously for Pochettino, win it because that's the thing that helps establish the winning culture that you want to take into 2026.
Absolutely. I mean, 100%. This is the kind of thing that you would hope Pochettino would put his hands on and really push his team to get this win, because it's important. I think it's especially important as a brand new head coach. Yes, you've got an awesome resume, but what have you done lately? What have you done for us? And Berhalter delivered in Gold Cups. Say what you will. I feel like I've noticed lately, I don't know if you've heard this too, it feels like there's a little bit of there's a resurgence of Berhalter. People are now acknowledging
nostalgia?
That.
You think it's a nostalgia? No,
I'm telling you, I'm hearing it in maybe not every corner. By the way,
I think you're mistaking like of Sebastian Berhalter for nostalgia for Greg. Right? Is that what's happening?
Man, talk about a guy. Talk about. Do you know that Squidward, when he gets the plastic surgery and he has the real like chiseled jaw and the big cheekbones? SpongeBob SquarePants reference.
I might actually know this.
Handsome Squidward. That's who.
Really. Okay.
Seb Berhalter reminds me of Handsome Squidward.
Okay, he's got. I see that. Trooper Barry is on board with you. He says Handsome Squidward. He's filling in. Yeah, you were there. You were right.
I was working there.
All right. Is that what we're going to call him now? Is he Handsome Squidward? Wow.
I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but you should look at it. I think that maybe not this moment, but
look. Okay, I'll be honest here. I have a 17-year-old. That is the only way through his life of watching SpongeBob. That's the only way I have taken in any SpongeBob information, and it's been largely through osmosis. I might be around while the SpongeBob is happening, and then sort of take in but I'm not glued to the SpongeBob, Dan. If you know what I'm saying, like
that's fair.
I know that there's a squirrel that lives under the water with them and has a helmet and the whole thing when she goes outside of her bubble. Like, I know that.
A Texan, no less.
Very important. This barbecue at some point in the history
of representation, buddy. Come on now.
Right. I know that there's the star guy who's a dummy. Like I know some things. Maybe I have seen this one. I have. Maybe I'm more of a fan of SpongeBob than I realized. Maybe that's what.
I think regardless if you've ingested some adult substances, SpongeBob SquarePants is a very relaxing, time to sit down and just let it go.
Like, I do think it's funny. I think it it kind of. I'm going to make a very old guy reference. I think it kind of trades on the stuff that Ren and Stimpy were doing in the 90s. So I'm on board. I know it's a little bit different, but there's some stuff there,
Sure.
right? There's some element. We go close up, very like, oh, we're going to see SpongeBob's pores for some reason.
Sure.
And, yeah, that's very Ren and Stimpy to me.
Sorry,
so
I derailed our conversation. I apologize.
What show do you think this is, Dan? This is the best soccer show.
Very
What
true.
we do.
No soundboard, but we got SpongeBob.
Soundboard's not working. I don't know. I just pushed the button. It says it's playing, but maybe it will play randomly. Maybe at some point it will play. All right.
WNBC. WNBC.
That's for my reference to what I do on the radio with Eric Winalda. So there is that. Okay. I actually had a Blue Sky post that I wanted to pull up. So give me a second, Dan. So let's talk about. Okay, we've established that we think they can beat Costa Rica, right? And I guess we'll cross the semifinal bridge when we get to it. Maybe you won't be here with me on a Best Soccer Show, but as a community,
be with you in spirit. Yes,
we will cross that bridge when we get to it. And I think it could be Canada, which will be a very interesting experience indeed. Should we get to that moment, Canada has closer to a full strength squad than we do, and they got Jesse Marsh, who claims he doesn't want to coach the U.S. men's national team ever. Now, I do think there's some truth to that. I think he's probably got some hostility towards the program because that man was up for the job.
So feel respect for the Gegner.
There he is right there.
So feel respect for the Gegner.
I hope he says that stuff to Canada, and they're just like, what? What's that? What's a Gegner? Some of them probably know. He's a little salty, and I guess we
listen. We've all been turned down by that girl that we wanted to talk to, and so the next thing you do is hate the girl because that's how you deal with those really difficult to deal with.
That's right.
Feelings.
That's right.
Yeah, we've all been.
Wow, that's very insightful, Dan. That's something Jay Rodius might say. As a matter of fact, that this is the situation where look, it's playing.
Jay Rodius.
Love it. Channeling.
Somehow you got a Jay Rodius. Yeah, he would say that. Like this is like, I like her and she doesn't like me back. So I'm gonna be mean to her. I'm gonna be super mean to her. Yeah, it's fascinating about the Jesse Marsh situation.
He is a very motivated enemy of the U.S. men's national team right now, and I think he will continue to be for the foreseeable future. He is a tough out for us, and he has a very talented squad, a squad that feels like it's getting better every time we come around for another cycle. They've added, a player that's coming into their own. And yeah, if we get past Costa Rica, we're going to have some tough sledding. And let's not forget that Mexico is also out there lurking should we advance far enough. And Mexico would love to punch us in the mouth.
Well, so let me ask you a question then. Let's do a hypothetical here. Again, nobody is taking it for granted that we're going to beat Costa Rica. Okay, I'm not saying that. We are fairly confident, but there's always a chance that Ticos could surprise us. Just usually doesn't happen in the Gold Cup at this stage, okay? But let's imagine we get past Costa Rica and we go into that semifinal against Canada. I guess, okay, either or. Pick your poison here, and this is actually kind of a thing. Okay, that's not going to play fast either. Well, eventually we'll get there. Would you rather the U.S. beat Canada and lose to Mexico, which would obviously be some sort of positive achievement followed by a disappointment against your biggest, or I'm not guess I don't have the other side of this because you don't want to lose to Canada. That's
well, if we lose to Canada, does in this scenario Canada lose to Mexico?
I got it.
What are we doing?
That's okay. That's my man Taylor. Beat Canada, lose to Mexico 5-0 in the final.
5-0.
5-0.
Okay.
5-0. Or you lose to Canada by a narrow scoreline in an incredible game. Which one is more preferable for the U.S. men's national team?
Listen, if we're losing to Mexico,
we've experienced 5-0 in a final in the Gold Cup before.
Listen, it's been a little while, but you're right. We have. Here's what I'll say: losing in a final is always better than losing in a semifinal, and because that means you advance there. It means you're the runner-up. Losing to Mexico is, at least historically, more. I'd prefer that over losing to Canada, just in the weight of history. Now I will also say I will never root for a Mexico win ever. I can't do it. My wife, who is a Mexican American, we oftentimes do not hang out when the U.S. plays Mexico. She will go to her parents' house because this is a house divided when L3 is on the screen.
Wow.
And I can't even admit, like I can't even watch highlights, and I can't do it. It's very difficult for me. So I don't want to lose to Jesse Marsh. He was so thirsty for the job to the point of like, I felt a little embarrassing. Like I felt embarrassed for him. Like, dude, like calm down, like act like you've been here before. Like you've coached around the world and you're acting like this about this job that of course had no guarantees and then was a jilted lover and now pretends he doesn't care, though he clearly does. The way he celebrates, remember, he's screaming on the sideline and walking down the hall for 16 hours. I mean, these are all things that we've seen from Jesse Marsh that indicates what his actual feelings are. So I don't ever want to lose to Jesse Marsh right now. It's just that would hurt. Lose it to Mexico. Let's be real. We've lost to Mexico before. Certainly we've lost to Canada also, but I don't like it. We've lost to Mexico before. Mexico is playing well. And Raul Jimenez is looking fantastic up front for them. I don't feel terrible. Would 5-0 hurt? Sure, but I can point we could point to the roster and say, hey, you know what?
Well, again, this is sort of like this is the way this game works, Dan. This game is set up to give us pain. It is a pain delivery system. That's what soccer is, as fans.
Can I pitch something back to you, Jason? Just a question.
Yeah, sure.
Do you think that this team can beat both Canada and Mexico in the same tournament?
My confidence level on that would be fairly low. Yeah. I think, percentage-wise, we're in the 30s probably for that. I mean, because I feel like you can when you go up against two of them, you can say, we could get a win in one of these, right? Like it may not be a high percentage win, but like we can beat the odds and get a win. But going up against both of them with this roster, I don't want to fall into that trap of necessarily connecting one game to the next, because I think that. Like we fall into that storytelling mode of like, oh, that game they didn't play well, so the next game they won't play well, and it doesn't. There's a lot of sort of empirical evidence that says really that's not a thing. This is like the whole momentum.
Right.
Or hot streak, like, oh, that guy's hot when he's on a, hitting streak. Well, is it really or clutch? I guess it's clutch that gets a lot of attention in the analytics world, right? There's no such thing as clutch, right? You're either good or you're not. The numbers that you have in the regular season are probably the numbers you're going to have when it comes down to the wire in the most important games. I think this team is good enough to beat Canada when they play their best, and probably just short of Mexico if Mexico plays their best. So, look, Canada can beat them 100%. Canada on their best day is beating this U.S. men's national team, probably, although I think it's probably going to be a bit of a grind. And I do think that, you can't take the U.S. out of the equation. You can't take Canada and say, well, they play this way, and just sort of like drop them in without considering how the U.S. will slow them down or do things or whatever, right? And there's a lot of reasons to think the U.S. would struggle in a game against Canada, particularly with their speed in Buchanan and what David provides and all that stuff. Mexico whips the ball around better than anybody in CONCACAF. That has a potential to open up the United States. I'm definitely more scared of Mexico than Canada. So I don't think it's like, oh, they can't beat both of them. If they beat Canada, they have a chance of beating Mexico. There's a chance they don't beat Canada, and we're not even talking about it, right? And then
there's a chance they don't beat Costa Rica.
That's absolutely true. And I put it on Nate's comment earlier. How are we talking about Canada and Mexico? We've been knocked out by Panama 3 tournaments in a row. Panama? What are we talking about? We should be talking about the Ticos. We did talk about the Ticos, right? And I think you and I are edging towards the U.S. winning that game. That doesn't mean that we don't think Costa Rica is capable. Sure. And I do think it's going to be a game that is still in the balance in the 85th, 86th, 88th minute. Like that's going to be the nature of that game. It could come down to a penalty. It could come down to a set piece. It could come down to, whatever. Who knows? We will find out. Okay. And I'm sorry. I know I'm picking on Nate. Shout out to Nate. He says, I'm sorry I joined late. My bad. I want to move us on from the Gold Cup because there are some things that beyond this will affect players we expect to be in the World Cup roster next year. And I'm going to start this conversation with this post on Blue Sky. Now, kind of picking on this person who I don't know. I saw this on my Discover tab. You know the Discover tab works on Blue Sky, right, Dan?
I
All
do.
right.
Yeah.
This is I didn't pick her because her name is Davis. I promise you that. We're not related. This is not a family thing. Kelly Davis, in response to a post about Nottingham Forest asking Milan about Yunus Musa, and apparently Timothy Weah, this according to the Forest Transfer Hub, says Timothy Weah refused to leave Juventus for Forest. That has been out there in the news, a possible move for Timothy Weah and another Juve player whose name escapes me at the moment to Nottingham Forest. It feels right that maybe Weah is saying, I want to stick it out and see if I can make my way at Juve. Kelly says, Forest, do not pick up Americans. Our men are not great at footy, and the USMNT are full of little prima donnas. Not saying Yunus specifically, but the culture on that team is rotten. Good Vibes FC does not need that. I guess she's calling Nottingham Forest Good Vibes FC. I didn't know that was their other name, Dan, but there you go. Do you think she has a point right now about any of our players?
Well, I mean, I always think about the challenges that Pulisic faced when he left Dortmund for Chelsea and went into a very crowded lineup and was constantly teased and then yanked for British talent because the team valued other names than his. And there were good players. I'm not saying that. I do think that the EPL is not always the best landing place for our players. And I mean, we've seen a mixed bag when it's come to that. I'm curious. It really comes down to the confidence of the coach and the player that they're signing. I mean, we saw, isn't that where Gio Reyna went and just sat the bench and never got a moment to play on the field to prove anything? I mean, what was the point of that? I get it. Teams change their minds. I understand. It doesn't always work out. I guess Good Vibes FC wasn't a good fit for Gio.
Well,
but that might be true. That was actually very, very
well. So that was obviously the season before the season that Nottingham Forest just had. That's worth pointing out.
Yeah.
So the vibes are different.
You're right. Better vibes now. Right.
Better vibes now. I will say that, and this is the cynical person that I am based on my experience, as much as I want to just kind of blindly believe in the game. Gio Reyna switched agents at the time. And he's now left that agent, by the way, but he switched agents. I think it's Jorge Mendes. He switched to Jorge Mendes. Jorge Mendes represents Nuno Espirito Santo. Gio Reyna leaves Dortmund on loan to go to Nottingham Forest, where Nuno Espirito Santo is the manager. It felt very sort of manipulated, like, hey, Nuno, do me a favor. Take my guy from Dortmund who can't get playing time there. He's talented. Maybe you'll find a place for him. And then what happened? He sat behind a couple of guys. Gibbs White, I think, was there at the time, and that was really tough for. I mean, he just wasn't going to get into that team, and then he obviously.
Can I insert another layer of sort of conspiracy thinking here? In that, have you noticed that the teams where we're seeing American owners come in and get invested, that all of a sudden there's room on roster for American players? I see that even PSV, where they where the general manager there is an American. Suddenly there become opportunities for Americans to play at PSV.
Okay. I think that's slightly different. That's a different flavor. Ernie Stewart saying, I think American players are good enough for PSV. And by the way, Malik Tillman, an American player of German vintage.
In name.
Let's be clear. Serginho Dest, an American player of Dutch vintage, right? The only one there that is kind of fits that. Actually, two, Richie Ledesma and Ricardo Pepi. Worth pointing out. But I think that's a little bit different of a flavor than the owner situation. And to that point, I think hopefully it works out. Like although I guess the recent news is bad. So John Textor, who owns part of Botafogo still, owned part of Crystal Palace that he now is apparently trying to sell to Woody Johnson, who owns the New York Jets, has now his team in France, Olympique Lyonnais, has signed the American goalkeeper Matt Turner. Who needs playing time and wasn't going to get at Crystal Palace, his other team. That feels like moving a player from left hand to the right hand in order to benefit, I guess, the player. I don't know. How much does John Textor care about Matt Turner's playing time ahead of the World Cup? I don't know that part. But maybe he got a discount on this. Maybe there was something, maybe the skids were greased for John Textor. And then obviously the news is that Lyon has been relegated provisionally to the second division of French football because their money's all backwards. And John Textor really wasn't the guy who did that, but he took on that stuff and hasn't been able to fix it. So, and he's also kind of a crazy guy. So there's a lot going on there.
Well, to get back to where we were originally, I think that it really comes down to, does a player fit the culture of the team that they're playing in? Does their playing style, is it conducive to what the coach is doing? Sometimes we see signings that feel like some of those thoughts weren't even thought by anyone beforehand. So I don't know that Nottingham Forest is some, good vibes and none of our players deserve a chance to be there. I think we have plenty of good vibes. Come on, we're Americans. We're super fun. Right.
There's also so this is again sort of like contextually about the individual player. So Timothy Weah brought up as a possibility for Nottingham Forest. He may or may not have turned that down. I don't think we can really trust any of the reporting on this right now. By the way, I don't think the window's even open yet for European football. Like, we're not even to that point where moves can be made. It's all pre-window opening machinations. Yunus Musa probably needs to get out of Milan. Now, Milan's a mess in general, which is something we haven't touched on when it comes to Christian Pulisic.
Yep.
Obviously, his position is very secure. There's a possibility that Leao leaves, although I'm not sure. To think about what pieces have already moved around European. Nico Williams going to Barcelona, so he's off the board at maybe Bayern Munich. So maybe Rafael Leao is in line for a Bayern Munich move, which obviously would make it a little bit different of a situation. They might have to replace him, but they don't have a lot of money. They have signed Luka Modric at Milan now, which kind of tells you what kind of barrel they're shopping in. As much as I love Luka Modric, the man is 39 years old, 38 years old.
You loved him a lot more a decade ago.
He's not the answer, is my point, right? He's more kind of like the first word of that answer. So should Yunus Musa hang around, right? Should he stick when it seems, and in fact, I saw a report today, Dan, that said Pulisic's position is stable. He's a central figure. That makes sense. But Yunus Musa could be sold if somebody comes in for him. And I don't know, like, we can't do this thing where, like, well, Luka looks pretty good at the Gold Cup, and Johnny Cardoso is sitting there, and Weston is a guy, and Malik is a guy in the midfield, and therefore we don't need Yunus Musa to be playing well. I'd prefer that. That would be better. MMA used to be a thing. I would at least like to have that option. So when it comes to potential moves that sort of like we think are good ahead of the World Cup, Yunus Musa might be near the top of that list. Yeah. The rest of those guys could probably make do with where they are. And I'm talking about, I'm talking about Malik Tillman in Leverkusen is out there in the news. What else am I missing? Do you know of any other?
Isn't Gio in there's conversations about Gio moving, and he needs to move. Like, it is.
Gio's in the same bucket as Yunus, but it's hard. It's even harder for me to get up for discussing Gio's potential revival than it is for Yunus Musa's potential revival. Yunus feels closer to maybe working his way back into maybe being a starter for the U.S. men's national team if he just gets some playing time than Gio does. And I feel bad about that. Gio shouldn't be a lost cause, Dan. He's not there yet. He's still young.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that his time, he's such a hard combination to unlock. But there's so much talent there that it always feels like it's worth going back and giving it another shot, finding something to give. And you're right. He's still a very young man, like early 20s right now. So there's still plenty of opportunities.
He's about to get married. I think he's a young man about to get married, which is, you do you, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess
don't ask me about marriage in your 20s. Don't ask me. I won't give you positive feelings about that.
I can say this: the marriages in my 20s didn't go very well.
All of my marriages in my 20s were a disaster.
I had a couple. Let's I'm taking the mask off here. I'm just being my authentic self. Agumang, apparently there's some rumors about him potentially making a move to Europe. But his MLS club is has also come out and said basically they're not just going to sell him for nothing. Like, they don't need to move him, and they'll move him if they find the right spot.
I think he has a very privileged salary position in the roster, so they don't really. I mean, everybody wants to make money.
Sure.
I don't know what the number is. Like $5 million. Does that get you 24-year-old Patrick Agumang? Is the right kind of fee? And maybe Charlotte says no to that. I do wonder how much Agumang, who seems like a very nice kid, and obviously has had this path of sort of like late bloomer through college, all that stuff, the small college and Rhode Island. We are in a moment where players can push, right? And players have power, particularly in trans. Like, hey, I want to go. Sell me, you bastards. Like, he's not going to hold out and not play. He's not going to be that guy, but he obviously could rattle some cages and make some noise if he really wanted to go. But I do think there's an open question of whether or not that would be better for him, because it looks like it's Ipswich Town potentially, which is a team coming down. You figure will be pretty decent, and Derby County, who finished bottom half of the championship last year, and very well could be pulled into a relegation battle. And then you're looking where it's kind of Daryl DK vibes all over again, although you're hoping that the injuries don't come. And by the way, that's the thing about Ajimang, Dan, is that I would not care as much about Ajimang moving now if there wasn't so many questions or weren't so many questions around the position with the U.S. men's national team, because there's a lot of names, just none of them have made a full case to be the guy going into 2026.
I was going to add a couple of pieces of information about is Tom. And also, apparently, Charlotte rejected a $4 million offer from Luton Town over the winter. So $5 million might not be enough, right? Given what we were talking about. I think you're right, though. There's always been questions around the striker position, the position that he plays, and has he done enough to become one of the three probably that are going to get a ticket to I guess to the United States if we're playing the games.
Do you think that Pochettino will take 3 center forward? I mean, I guess he did on this team, right? But Damian Downs feels like an experiment, right? You bring in Damian Downs for the Gold Cup because he's 20 and he's he's never been in a national team camp, and you're just like, oh, that's a potential, and we don't have Sargent's not our guy.
So in your mind, it's 2?
I think it might be 2. I think it might be 2, in part because of the way that Pochettino likes to play. I feel like you need more depth at the winger positions. So if you're bringing extra wingers, you can't bring extra center forwards.
I mean, listen, if that's the case, I think in my mind, it's already solidified and we don't even have to worry about this, that this is a conversation for the next cycle, because to me, and some people might not agree with me here, Balogun is your number one. I think that's been pretty cemented as long as he's healthy. And I get that that's a big if there. And I think the second person is Ricardo Pepi. And the great thing about Pepi is that he scores off the bench also. He's shown a propensity for doing that for the United States. So now you have this player that you can bring in who will come in primed to score and doesn't need 20-30 minutes of warm-up before he's dangerous. So to me, that's set. And I think if you're going to have a third, it's probably Sargent. It's weird, though. I've heard a lot of people complaining about the fact that Sargent wasn't here for this and hasn't got any time in the Gold Cup. And why wasn't he considered here?
Well, I mean, I think the thing that people point to, and I've seen plenty of anti-Sargent opinion, is that he doesn't score with the national team. He just doesn't score.
I'm not a fan of Sargent, personally.
I mean, I think he's a good player. Do I think he's sort of an international level difference maker? No, I don't think he's that player. And so, but I do think Ricardo Pepi's nose for goal is sort of undeniable. And so I'm okay. I think you're right. I think it is Balogun and Pepi. Although you don't get, neither of those guys do what Ajimang does physically. So then you're talking, because they're both going to want the, and Ajimang has kind of the best moments he's had in the Gold Cup have been runs in behind. They haven't been sort of back to goal. I think he's turned a center back and gotten a shot off a couple of times, and it's been relatively decent. And obviously what you want is a guy who can play back to goal and bring his teammates in as well. And I think he's kind of struggled in that area because he's just not refined in terms of his touch and his technical ability. And that's not going to change. In a year, he's not going to become a much better technical player, Dan. So do you bring him because he's a big body and he can do some physical things, or do you say, okay, well, we're just going to play with 2 guys who run off the back shoulder and try to slip them in? And that's why Diego Luna, that's why Malik Tillman, that's why, that's not what Christian Pulisic does, not what Weston McKennie does, although I think he's capable of it. But maybe you're introducing players who do have that club in their bag a little bit more, and you're just buying into that. But that's the thing. We won't see them a lot. Certainly we won't see them in meaningful matches. We'll only see them in friendlies if Pochettino gets an opportunity to bring them in to try to make that work.
I mean, that's the big negative of being qualified already for the World Cup. There's just not a lot of matches that matter for this team from here through. We're done. We're signed up. We're finished. We're going. We're gonna host. And we're not going to see, by the way, U.S. Women's National Team just scored a second goal, by the way. 2-0. And man, Ireland, man, they play rough. Anyway, sorry, don't get too distracted here.
What would you expect, Dan? Come on.
I mean,
Come
I'll
on.
never forget what they did to Mal Swanson and kept her out of a World Cup, and I will never forgive them for that.
Yeah.
My favorite.
I've been listening to some podcasts about the Irish Revolution. Yeah, it's I'm not entirely Irish, but there's enough Irish in me that sometimes I'm like, oh.
Did you ever listen to Kneecap?
I have not. I need to. I've heard about Kneecap.
Yeah,
I need to listen to Kneecap.
Little revolution right there. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
But anyway, back to what we're saying. Yeah, I think that I feel like, considering where Aguiman is in his developmental process, and I understand that he's also older, but I feel like this World Cup is probably out of reach. Even if he moved to a bigger place where he was getting more minutes and more opportunities, I still don't know that it matters. I think that we're just too close. And the one thing, though, that I will say, the wild card here, is that Pochettino has clearly established that if he likes a player, he will continue to play that player, regardless of what the evidence on the field might indicate. That, like, Max Arfsten is not my favorite player, and there have been a lot of complaints about his play in this Gold Cup, and he has continued to get minutes over and over again, much to the chagrin of many American fans.
Obviously, our saving grace on Max Arfsten, who I like with Columbus, and I think he's well utilized by Wilfred Nancy, but not in this setup, right? This is the thing about their club performance does not always inform your national team contribution. What I'll say for obviously the saving grace is that Jedi Robinson would be the obvious starter if he was healthy, right? So that's that we can kind of like, okay, well, Max Arfsten is getting a lot of run, and that seems really weird, but at least Jedi will be back at some, and we of course cross our fingers and knock on wood and all those things that Jedi will be healthy in the summer of 2026, because we can't count on everybody being healthy. There's a good chance somebody won't be. So, let's all pray to the soccer gods and do that. One more American player moving. And again, it's another frustrating player when it comes to the U.S. men's national team. And by the way, there is a chance Josh Sargent moves this summer. I don't know if that's definitely happening, but it's a possibility. Johnny Cardoso. Johnny Cardoso has himself a season at Real Betis. He suddenly is highly regarded in Spanish football. Tottenham was really making a move for him, signed a contract that basically was like, we get first right of refusal, but they weren't going to meet the number that Betis set. And now Atletico Madrid has swooped in. Now, based on Atleti's performance in the Club World Cup, maybe no, I'm just kidding. That is a world-class club with a world-class manager who will have expectations going into this season. And they spent $30 million or something like that on Johnny Cardoso. I mean, that is right there, validation that this is a very, very good soccer player, Dan. And I'm hoping, just like everybody else, that this flips a switch, and that when Johnny shows up for the national team after having played for Atleti, we get a different Johnny.
I think that's very hopeful, right? Like, I think it's something that, we literally starting the conversation was, how much does club play impact the play for the national team? And so often, and I could think, particularly under previous managers, we've complained that the national team was nothing more than the sum of its parts. And you want to see something more. And oftentimes players would come, play down to their opponents, and you wouldn't see that club excellence shine through. Johnny is an interesting player. He brings a lot of things to the table in the midfield that make him kind of a tantalizing roster option. He does different kinds of things, and he played well for Betis. And wasn't Betis in the Euro final, if I remember correctly? Did I remember that correctly?
They were in the Conference League final.
That's what it was. That's what it was. Yes. So many competitions, it's hard to keep track. So he's played well. He's done great for Betis. Sometimes I wonder, and I wonder about when a player finds a good fit, plays very well, and the first thought is, well, let's get him out of here to another club. And I sometimes wonder if that doesn't, I think the hope is that they progress in their game, but oftentimes finding a good fit for a player, if it's psychologically or if it's with the players he's playing with, or if it's a style of play, all of those things contribute to that success. And it's not individually all the time, right? Like sometimes you don't have the right situation. So I'm hopeful that he puts thought in here. I don't, Spanish football is a mystery to me. I'll be honest. I don't watch a lot of it. So, but Johnny's a good player.
I-
He's got a good mustache too. Well, I love a good mustache.
Man, that's the thing. It's like there you have to split your brain a little bit sometimes because there are so many examples in the history of this game of players who played really well for a club team but couldn't make it work for a national team. They were stars at the club level, international stars, but didn't really show up or didn't really do enough for their national team to sort of be celebrated that way. And the other way around, right? There are a number of players who were mercurial figures and just couldn't. Ricardo Quaresma always comes to mind for me for Portugal. Like always, the Quaresma was incredible with Portugal, but his club career was kind of this messy disaster for most of it. He just couldn't stick long enough to really get his, to get his feet underneath him. That stuff happens. We can't explain it all the time, but it happens.
Mhm.
It just, because we're American, because we're waiting for our national team to level up, and because we don't have a ton of top 5 European League level players, and Johnny is now moving up into a Champions League tier after being in the Conference League tier, which is a nice tier, but that's not the best tier. You want to be in the Champions League tier, Dan. Because he's doing, it's like, man, this is just so frustrating. Like this is just so frustrating. Why can't you make this stuff work together, guys? Come on.
Yeah, you can't get the Legos to stick together the right way. Yeah.
It's just so hard. It's just so hard. All right. That's an hour of the Best Soccer Show with Dan Vaughn sitting in for Jared Dubois. I'm sure Jared would have loved to have been here, but again, as we've said, he's at the beach house. He's enjoying California. He's probably sipping on some wine. Maybe there's a fire. Maybe he's got his keys in a bowl. I don't get into what he does, Dan. He goes off, he does his stuff, and then he's going to come back at some point in the near future.
He's having a California adventure. That's what he's doing. I love that for him.
Having a California. That's true. Wow, that's very good. Do you doing ads now? Is that value added stuff? Do I get paid?
I hope that there's a kickback. That's what we're looking for.
All right. Dan, before I let you go, tell everybody about your stuff and where to get it and what they should be doing to interact with you.
I love that. Thanks, Jason. Well, this is that moment, the time to shine. If you're looking for my writing and the writing of many other talented people that are writing about lower league soccer from a variety of leagues, from a variety of parts across the country, protagonistsoccer.com. We cover lower league soccer and the USL Super League, which Jason mentioned earlier. That is something that we've taken on as a pet project, something that we've really invested a lot of time in. We see it as an important new aspect of the American soccer scene for women, and we're very excited about it. They, as Jason mentioned, they just wrapped up their first season. Congratulations to Tampa Bay Sun. You'll love to see it. We talk about a lot on our podcast, The Super Show. That's on the Protagonist podcast feed. If you are on Spotify, if you're on iTunes, if you search for Protagonist Podcast, you'll find us there. All kinds of content around lower league soccer all over the place.
All right, there you go. Dan Vaughn sitting in for Jared Dubois here on the Best Soccer Show. I will take this opportunity at the end of the program to remind you that we have a Patreon for the Best Soccer Show. Patreon.com/The Best Soccer Show. You will get access to the Besties Slack. I think everybody in here, for the most part, is in the Besties Slack. I know my man Jason is. I'm pretty sure Nate. I'm not sure about Nate. I know Nate's a member over on the Morning Kick Around program. I don't know about Nate in the Besties Slack. But anyway, lots of people in the Besties Slack. It's a great community of soccer fans in America, talking about other things too, not just soccer. It's kind of like, oh, I need a recommendation for a car seat because I'm having a baby. Boom, the Besties got you. They are on top of it. I got hooked up. Dan, I don't know if you know this. I talked about a lot on the show and on the bonus show. I got hooked up with wine tastings in Napa thanks to the Besties Slack.
Wow.
Because our besties are hooked up with wine people in Napa, California. It was actually incredible. And just got some wine delivered to yesterday, as a matter of fact, from my trip. So patreon.com/The Best Soccer Show. I mentioned the newsletter earlier. I'm trying to be more consistent. We'll see how that goes. Look for Jason Davis Soccer Eagle on your Google machine, and you will find my newsletter at ghost.io. You can sign up there and get it into your inbox.
Jason Davis, I literally just signed up for subscribe to it. Just wanted to give you the heads up on that.
That is so nice.
And I did it exactly as you described it. I Googled it, found it, and I am excited to read your soccer content, sir.
I'm having fun with it. So if people don't know, not to be too navel-gazy here, but I started as a writer. I wasn't doing podcast, and I started podcast, and I was still writing, and I wrote for a very long time on American soccer and occasionally on other topics. My writing stuff slowed down about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And I was like, hey, I kind of miss it. And, I'm not going to take it too seriously. You're not going to get, I have no editor. So nobody's cutting out the bullshit. It's going to have bullshit in it. It's going to have weird thoughts. It's going to have my side things. My ADD brain is going to go left and right, but maybe there'll be something in it for you. So Jason Davis, Soccer Eagle, for that. Morning Kick Around is the morning show, Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays on YouTube. You can get that at 9:30 a.m. Eastern live, be part of the live show, or you can watch the whole show or the videos, the clipped videos afterwards. Dan's been a guest on that program, I think. Yeah. I do a lot of things. I'm pretty sure you've been a guest on that. Pretty sure you've been a guest. He's been on that. Dan definitely has been a guest on that program. So Morning Kick Around is that situation there. I think that's it. I feel there's probably more plugs in. Follow Dan and I on Blue Sky. Like help Soccer Blue Sky grow. That would be a nice thing as well.
Nicholas Murray, also a good follow, who's filling up your chat here. This guy,
yes,
he's a good follow on Blue Sky as well.
Look at that. Check out Protagonist.
Good
people, good stories. Look at that. Who's he talking about? Way.
Good people. I don't know about that. The stories are good.
Oh, the best people. That's what he's talking about. All right, I'm going to get the number off the screen, and then we're going to send us off into the night. Dan, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Jason. Appreciate you.
Bye-bye.
Or hello.
So feel respect for the Gegner. So feel respect for the Gegner.
Who asked those questions? It was there.
Oh, here we go. Saucing them up. Hit him. What?
The Sausage King of Chicago.
Is that JTT?
OMFPG-13, it's JTT!
Oh, it's incredible!
Damn, dog, that's in a props.
Michael freaking Arasco Fiscal.
Jay Rodius.